You're now plugged into the Delphi podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tommy, your host, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Shaw, who is the founder of Eliza Labs and does a zillion events. I don't know how he keeps up. And I'm also joined by Ejaz, who's a friend who just started his fund, 26 Crypto Capital, and he's been intimately involved with the liquid crypto AI scene. Shaw, how's it going, man? Good to have you on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. You know, out in Seoul, having a lot of fun on a little tour. So I'm glad to connect with you again and have a chat.
I love it. Ejaz, you gave Shaw a different title than the one I introduced. Could you repeat that? That was pretty good.
Yeah,
Before we went on.
There's two titles: the man, the myth, the legend, and Degen Spartan AI's daddy.
Yeah. I'll take that one.
It's such a good phrase. You're a dad to a robot.
I've always wanted to have AI children.
So Shaw, it's great to have you back on. You shared a pretty crazy tweet I want to start off the podcast with. Was you kind of shared your journey from, being in debt, living in this small apartment, wife getting mad at you, selling this thing out, getting some tokens. Like, can you maybe just walk us through the quick rundown of how you got here? Because the story's pretty crazy.
Yeah, man. So, like, I've been an open source dev for a long time. I'll start with one really crazy thing I didn't even mention there, which is I made an open source project that I really believed in, open spatial web project, like end-to-end ability to launch worlds and put characters in them and do that whole thing. And I launched it with somebody who deleted me from the GitHub and sold it for $75 million. And I got nothing. And I was the chief dev, and he did not code a single fucking line of code, but, sometimes that's how it works. And, oh yeah, I'm definitely suing him, but it's been a long time grinding. And so I kind of went from that to, like, being in a pretty bad situation of kind of losing everything and having, like, my entire reputation totally trashed and by somebody who made up a lot of bullshit. And I had to go from that to, okay, well, what do I do next? And it really hurt. It really hurt to, like, I think a lot of people ask me about, like, don't you worry about your source code being stolen? And I'm like, you have no idea. You just have absolutely no idea. And so from there, I kind of picked up the pieces, and it was like kind of right at the beginning of COVID, and I just was like, well, what's next? And I started working really hard on the AI agent stuff. I'd kind of been working that on already, but I kind of had to start over. And it was really hard. And I just I had taken some money as an investment from a friend, and I worked really, really hard to try to meet the sort of milestones of that and make it happen. And we kind of did, but also, like, drove myself pretty badly into debt doing so, just because this person had taken all of the money, and I took all of the responsibility to try to ship what we had promised. And was, like, basically doing a lot of, like, service projects, helping people, clients, kind of stuff, while trying to make this thing happen. And at some point it was just like, this is, the kind of the bear market hit, and metaverse wasn't so hot anymore, and it was just, like, kind of, like, not the right thing. And that was a hard time. So I ended up kind of going to work as lead dev of a company called Webiverse, and that was pretty good. Like, those guys were good to me, but project got hacked, lost the whole treasury, had to pivot. It was pretty dark days. And
That's like cry in the shower type moment. For sure.
There's been a lot of setbacks, let me tell you. And I think a lot of it was a lot. And kept building. Started a platform with the creator of Project 89 called Magic, and we raised a little bit of money, about like kind of an okay seed round, and kept building that. I sort of kind of felt like we really needed to focus on, like, an end-to-end agent. He really wanted to build a platform, like a no-code platform for people to come and build agents on, and I just felt like if we gave them the whole thing, they'd copy it, but if we didn't, they wouldn't really know where to start. So we kind of got close to running out of money, and I was like, I just want to go work on the agent stuff. And I'd actually already started building the first version of Eliza on that platform. And My
this is
wife had.
insane. This is insane. It sounds like you've just been kind of trying things, beaten down, trying things again, beaten down, and this has been like kind of like a consistent part of your persona. In my perspective, I kind of like tracked what you've kind of put out on Twitter, and you've just been relentless, which, to be honest, is like a hallmark of any kind of like top founder in any kind of space, right? That's insane. Um, you mentioned earlier, and I want this to kind of like pivot into this to kind of like demonstrate how you are this consistently. Where are you right now? You mentioned you're in Seoul, right? What are you doing in Seoul? What have you been doing? It seems like you've been in Asia for like the last couple weeks, and it's been nonstop, like meeting with developer communities out there. Like, can you tell us a bit more about, what's been going on? Like, you're now at the center of this AI agent meta, right? This A16Z stuff, and you're still on the ground, like kind of like getting shit done. Like what's the move right now? Like, why are you in Asia?
Um, when we launched this project, yeah, I'd been throwing a lot of darts against the wall, and just like I think anybody you talk to who knew me from then is like, yeah, Shaw's like the unluckiest and hardworking, the most hardworking person I know. I wouldn't say I'm the smartest or anything else, but I'll definitely take I worked really freaking hard and really tried to grind this thing out. Um, and once we kind of this AI16Z took off, I got a lot of messages from people over in Asia, especially China, but generally all over. Some of that was like a lot of fun, but generally, it seemed like we had a lot of supporters over there, and I met some people who are part of this community called the 706 community, and one of them came and like helped us to moderate our like Chinese channel in our Discord, and we did like a little hackathon together, and I got to meet all these devs and judge their projects, and I was just like, I got to go over there and meet these people. And so we just booked this little like, hey, I'm going to these cities. I want to meet all the devs. I want to meet everyone who's interested in our project. And people just like came out of the woodwork and put these events together. I've just gone from event to event, like talking, meeting people,
Wow.
it's crazy. Like crowds of people just getting, sitting there meeting every single person and talking to them about their project, sharing my Telegram and saying like, let's do something, let's get in touch. Like, just give me a little bit to catch up because there's a lot. Um, and now I'm in Seoul. I was in Hong Kong, and before that Beijing and Shanghai. Gonna go to Japan
Have
day after
you
tomorrow.
have you seen anything crazy from some of these meetups yet? Sure. Like, has someone come and pitched you like maybe like a wild idea, or maybe they pitched you something where you've been like, huh, I didn't even think about that. That's super cool that you're building that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of interesting games. I've seen a lot of interesting like applications. Obviously, a lot of like waifu stuff, virtual girlfriend stuff. It's kind of interesting. I was talking to a guy today here in Korea who's like doing robots, and I several people doing robots, which I think is interesting. People doing wearables. A lot of people talking about how well we have these like data collection platforms, and we do these like fine tuning and data labeling and stuff, which is all like could really tie into like, well, we have this swarm, and we could do some really interesting things with this very unique data that the swarm is collecting. Um, I think it's all like still pretty early days, but definitely like incredible amount of enthusiasm. People doing kind of every project. I think that the boring stuff is what I'm probably most excited about, which is DeFi. A lot of people building AI agents into their DeFi protocols is like a way to reach users and explain and lower the barrier to entry. I think I've said this before. I think that's really the killer app of like the next meta, the next few months. Um, and yeah, I mean, a lot of yeah,
Shaw,
yeah.
no, Shaw, this is a great thread to hit on, right? Like AI16Z is worth several billion dollars now. There's thousands of agents like deployed using the framework. If you go to Eliza's world, it's like a really easy way to see, what you have built and what's being built. And the developer interest is just off the charts. Like you guys have been trending globally on GitHub, which is nuts for weeks if I remember correctly. And now it seems like we're sort of getting into this narrative where people are tired with these influencer auto reply agents on Twitter, and they want agents that are actually doing things, right? Like creating tokens, managing economies, managing ecosystems, like doing DeFi actions. Like, is this where you see it going? Like, is DeFi where you want Eliza agents to focus on, or yeah, what would be your view
I
there?
mean, man, I'm tired of the reply bots. I think that there's such an obvious business opportunity here, and it's just a lot of people who are, like just download the thing and pump the token, and I really want to see us get beyond that. I think the things that I'm most excited about fall into kind of three categories, which are agents that make you money, obviously, uh, agents that bring their product to the right people, like find the customers that are looking for those products and bring them to them, and then agents that save you time. So I think right now, like we're stuck in this like slot bot reply meta. Like I just block all the bots that reply when they're not summoned. And I think that I'd actually encourage people to do that because I think it'll create like a social back pressure that forces agent devs to actually think a little harder and build something real. If you're just like following KOLs and commenting on everything that they're doing, you're actually making it worse for everybody. And it's not going to help your token at all. Not any more than like the random, 200 follower PFP guy who's like, what about this token? What about this token? Like, come on. And so what I definitely I think I'm most excited by DeFi because it's like anywhere like there's a lot of arbitrage in anything that's like very valuable and like very obviously could make people money, but they just don't know how to use it. And I think that DeFi really falls into that category more than anything else I can think of. A lot, and I kind of realized this in yeah. Sorry, go for it.
No, what do you think some of those things might look like, Shaw?
Let's start with like liquidity pools. A lot of people have a fear of using liquidity pools at all because of the impermanent loss that can be associated with the tokens, like your pairing kind of going out of range, or having a very wide range, and then people just don't like really understand how liquidity pools work. And so we've been working with people like Orca, and I'm also working with another team who's building something on Meteora with the DLLMs. And the bot automatically kind of looks and sees the potential of like, okay, cool, I could these tokens are going out of range, I'll pull them out, I'll rearrange them, can also like send the yield back to your wallet and just kind of like automate the entire experience in a way that's relatively safe for users to put their tokens into. I think part of this is also the meta of meme coins is like so volatile. Like actually, like at the beginning of a meme coin launch, they pump so hard that it's kind of like hard to LP them. But once they've sort of gotten stable, the volatility like really plays to your favor. And there is a lot of money to be made. And frankly, like I don't sell tokens. I pretty much just make money off of LP. And I've tried to encourage a lot of other agent devs to do this, but I've been shocked by how many like I had a friend come to me and he's like, I'm really struggling. I'm not making any money. And I'm like, well, have you like liquidity pooled your tokens or done anything? He's like, no, I don't have time. I'm like, dude, what you're doing this wrong. You have like a whole supply of tokens. You should be doing something. You could be earning a lot of money off of the volume of your token. Like you have no liquidity and then you could be liquidity.
It's almost like a
yeah.
a yield strategy, right? Like if you were to like kind of dumb it down, if you could pitch it as kind of like an automated risk managed yield strategy, then I think a lot of people would kind of be more prone to using this. I mean, sure, you've said this over a number of different tweets, and I completely agree with you. The whole point around these agents is they're going to make these things, these blockchain pieces, much easier to understand and use. They're going to abstract away all the complexities, right? And the LP pool within DeFi is one of those things. I agree with you. These agents are almost going to like make these markets more hyper efficient, right? What are you seeing aside from just LP pools? Like one idea, which is kind of like a popular idea right now, is that these agents are just going to like manage their own funds. They're going to ape, they're going to degen, they're going to trade, and obviously AI16Z. You've got PM AI Arca, you've got Degen Spartan AI, which are going to trade their own kind of AUMs. Like, where do you see kind of that developing? Do you think we'll see that in Q1 or this year at all? Do you think these agents are smart enough or capable enough, or what do you think?
Oh, we're definitely going to see a lot of it. And I think that LLMs probably aren't the best thing to just do trading on right now. I do think that if you had the right like APIs to pull market intelligence from, you could make reasonably good assessments. I mean, if you look at like AI16Z, I read something like he's like trading at like 41% success on his calls or something like that, which is actually probably pretty good considering like most coins don't necessarily do well. But I think that I think like LLMs are not really very good at like complex decision making, and the more context you provide to them, the more reasonable they are. But they are just like predicting the next token. I think where they become really valuable is in turning unstructured data into structured data, which is like turning a group chat of people shilling to each other into information that you could then do something with. So like our core research, like we have a team of researchers, like PhD researchers, working on a paper, and that paper is called the Marketplace of Trust. And the idea of that is, well, if we took all those people in that chat, or like all the KOLs on Twitter or whatever, and we actually took them at face value and made trades based on their recommendations, then would we have made money? And for some of those people, like some small percentage of those people, like are definitely better traders and recommenders than the other people. And we're looking at who are the top percentile of those people, and let's just listen to them, because and so this is kind of like prediction markets. Like there's just some group of people who are super forecasters who are just crazy good at prediction markets, and then the vast majority of people are pretty bad, or they're just like really, sort of subject to like pretty basic behavioral economics and stuff. So that idea is like, how do we actually get agents to trust people? Well, it sort of has to like track them by metrics that make sense for whatever it's doing, and then leverage that as kind of its training strategy. So it's like definitely more of a collective intelligence play than like oh yeah, let's just like give a bunch of listings and time series data to an LLM and have it say, oh yeah, I'll buy this or that. I think that I've seen some people doing that. We certainly could do that, but I just don't feel like it's really what the technology is great for, and I don't think it's really solving the hard problem of that we're of like, how does an agent know how to trust somebody or how to trust people in a community and stuff. And I'm really interested in not just applying this to money, but to apply it to governance, rewards for contributorship, and these other kind of more abstract things. But money is definitely the easiest because it's kind of like a nice Lego block. It's very easy to measure. Um, and I think and so we want to kind of do something that's a little bit more flexible and reliable than just like, cool, yeah, throw this stuff in an LLM. I definitely think you could do, like, it'd be really easy to build that agent, right? It's just gonna buy and sell stuff. I just don't know if it would actually make money. I assume that it would if it was buying like top 10 tokens in a bull market. But I don't think it would necessarily just by taking like any shitcoin off Pump Fund and like trying to predict if this would go well or not. If that makes sense.
So, no, it's a great take. I've always wondered if people would keep that bot internal. Like, would RenCap ever open source their like trading algorithm? I guess I'm curious. Like, if there were an agent that was really good at trading, what is the incentive to like open source that, create a token around it versus just trade for yourself, right? Like, what are the community benefits, or are there not any?
I totally like. So there's a company that I won't name, but someone's telling me like, yeah, they can predict token price like at 70% accuracy, and I'm like, if I could do that, I would not be here. I would not be telling you about that. I would just be printing infinite money because 70% accuracy on something that's like shortable like Bitcoin, like you could definitely, you could make infinite money. And I'm sure that like that's what the Black Rocks of the world are doing to some degree. They're trying to process all of the world's data to make these insights on stocks and stuff, and maybe they are successful at that. They certainly have a lot of people working on that kind of thing. But I don't think in this world of like very low market cap stuff, which is really like subject to behavior and just like any like Ansem retweeting the thing is probably going to have more impact than like any fundamentals you could have predicted. And so it's probably comes down to like, somebody posting like, hey, here's a contract address. Ansem just retweeted it. And if you can respond to that immediately, that's like almost better than any algorithm you could really invent, I think. And that's actually why I think meme coins are interesting is,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like a super low market cap thing that's super sensitive to social dynamics. So if you can just follow the social dynamics, like you can that's kind of where the alpha lies.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I guess I have one longer question for you. So my friend Vishal from Mythos VC, who we invested in, had a thesis pretty early on that the only way you really differentiate in AI is having, proprietary data to fine tune a model, a totally new model architecture, or like a different or unique business integration, like Microsoft Excel with their bot, et cetera. So I'm curious, like looking at the Eliza landscape and looking at all the agents you see and all the developers working, what do you view as the major differentiator with a team using Eliza to bring an insanely new novel agent to market? Like, is it in the model? Is it in the data? Is it in what Eliza provides? Like, what is it?
There's definitely this meme going around of like, isn't it just a GPT wrapper? It's like, well, I mean, like, is a website an HTTP wrapper? Like, is an application just like a, I don't know, a React
Yes,
wrapper, like
bingo.
um like it's actually more about the product and more about like, do you have customers using this product giving you money? Like that is the fundamentals of anything. I think models are extremely commodified. They're extremely expensive to train a base model from scratch, like in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so yeah, I'm sure if we had like $150 billion like OpenAI's market cap, like it would be pretty trivial to say like, okay, cool, let's build the whole end-to-end training and train models. But then like, what's the maximum benefit of that? Okay, now we're competing with Meta, OpenAI, XAI, Google, on who are all just like trying to edge out that extra like 0.2% on the MLU benchmark to prove that they're like the best model in the world. Um, and at the same time, they're like XAI is open sourcing the last version of Grok every time they release the new one. Meta releases everything they make, and they're just open sourcing and kind of doing it like a mind share dominance, and they really have like taken over the mind share of LLMs across the board. OpenAI is like basically ChatGPT is an OpenAI wrapper. Like I could build ChatGPT and sell it. The main thing they have going for them there is like brand. And they do have, obviously great products and stuff. And I just think that it's like the wrong space for any of us to compete in. I think we should be focusing on enabling developers to build products. I really think that this is about the internet. This is about the future of like websites and products and how users like use applications. And it really like there's so many great like this is kind of the same thing like why DeFi is a killer app of agents, which is there's all these great products that already exist. The infrastructure is already developed. They're just waiting for users and they don't know how to find them. Like you cannot Google DeFi protocol to make me money. Maybe you can find some lists somewhere and you can do your research, but like it's surprisingly hard to be aware of this stuff if you don't know what to look for. Um, and so I think that where the real value proposition is going to be connecting a lot of stuff that already exists and just changing the paradigm and moving from like being on a website with like a landing page, revolutionizing finance for, the digital age or whatever it's going to say, and bringing that onto social media where people actually are and like showing your product's use case and bringing, and finding the users that you would want to use it. Like instead of having the slot bot replying to everything I say, what about like going and identifying people who actually want what you're selling, and then go and try and help them to arrive at that conclusion. So if people are like, oh, I've got all these tokens, like what do I do with them? Like, oh, hey, here's a bot for that, or people asking questions on Reddit, like, oh, here's the solution for that. And so I think that this needs to not just be like AI agent is the product, but that AI agent is kind of part of a deep, it's like the interface to a product. And I'd like to see a
Yeah,
lot more of that. I think,
I
yeah,
couldn't agree.
go for it.
Couldn't agree more, sure. And I guess my question is, why do you think Eliza, the framework itself, or maybe even like the platform that you guys are building now, is best suited to kind of be that home space for developers and builders to kind of, you know, answer that question, like what do people need, what can I build to help bridge that gap, to help solve something that someone needs, compared to like maybe other platforms and other frameworks that other teams are working on. You've got like, I think there's these different frameworks. There's one in Python from Cerebro team, there's one in Rust from the Arc team. Like what's Elijah's special sauce per se?
I think language is actually part of it, not the whole story, but it is relevant. Like, there are more JavaScript developers building applications than anything else. We're currently communicating in a podcast app that's built on JavaScript. Pretty much every communication app you have, from like Discord to Microsoft Teams, is also built in JavaScript or like some sort of native runtime with the UI and the actual interaction stuff built in JavaScript. A lot of the backend, and there are more developers who are building on JavaScript and TypeScript than pretty much all the other languages combined. It's like just wildly popular, especially with the rise of things like React Native, and other kinds of ways of like deploying these apps. Like Tori is a good example. And so I think there's just like a large developer base, especially anyone who's like built on EVM before, has downloaded Node.js and run Forge or Truffle or one of these, and is like familiar with the ecosystem pretty well. And so I think you're just like tapping something that if you've ever made a website before, you can also make an agent. Python's not like a particularly hard language, but it's not super like easy to package into different form factors, like running it in the browser, running it embedded. And it's for a lot of people get stuck just installing Python. Like the ecosystem is a fucking mess. The package installer situation is crazy, and it could just be as simple as like people are like, I don't know, I can't get the right version to work. Although I think Python is also like a good way to build backend stuff. But generally, I used to build a lot in Python. I built all my agent stuff in Python, and I just came across like there are some really technical reasons why it's not great. Like it's just kind of bad at asynchronous programming, and like you have to like you just the way you manage async in it's kind of stupid. It's not great at string handling because it uses like tabs and or spaces for the way that you structure code. And I just found it like really annoying. And I was kind of turned on by another friend who was doing a lot of agent development in TypeScript, and I just realized like, well, that's obviously the way. And so that's like part of it. The other part is that like we were just giving you an end to end thing. When you clone it, it just works. And I think Arc is a cool project, but there are no connectors for it. There's no social connectors. And there's other projects that are like ZeroBro is cool. ZeroPie is cool because like it is kind of just like you know it's just social connectors basically and like loops to reply to stuff. And then there's like a lot of other projects that are kind of just a LARP where it's just like, cool, you got some ChatGPT talking to itself. You made like three agents chat with each other in like your command line, but does it actually connect to social media? Does it connect to anywhere? And I really think like what these frameworks are is kind of the body to the brain. Like definitely the LLMs are a powerful brain, and what we're really building is like the body, like the thing that actually bridges that over to these like different clients and stuff. And just by providing all of that in a box, I think we're like dramatically lowering the barrier to entry as well as like the amount of code that anyone needs to write to deploy a product, and they can just focus on like their product, make a character, pull in your APIs. We have like really simple abstractions for like input, output. Input is called like a provider, and that could be anything you want. You could get the news, you could get relevant memories, you could get like kind of your like Zach XPT or sorry your AI XPT style APIs, of like market intelligence and stuff that's relevant to whatever someone's talking about. Go like look up the coin, pull all the data down, and then you have another yeah.
Hey, Shaw,
Mm-hmm.
so sorry to interrupt. This is fascinating. I guess like I'm not a developer, right? But every time I see a tweet about Eliza, I see like hundreds of new features being released. You ask for things live. Like I think you just asked for um, all the agents to have voice through 11 Labs or something recently. Like the dev flow and the amount of features being released is ridiculous, right? It's very high. But as a non-developer, I don't really understand what that means, right? Like if I have a killer model, do I just sort of bring it to Eliza and this thing is live on Twitter? Or can you maybe bridge that gap for me? If I'm an agent builder and I'm approaching either, Eliza or a competing platform, like, what do I get in maybe non-dev
Yeah,
speak?
I mean, you pull the code down onto your computer, you modify your character, and you start, and you're kind of out of the box gonna have a bot that can shill and do whatever, like talk about whatever you want. And that's kind of the minimum. We have a lot of plugins, so let's say you want to add a wallet. Well, you just enable that plugin, add like a private key for any of the EVM chains, whatever chain you want, and you've got that. You can add API keys like or for Discord, or you can add your Twitter like username, email, and that's all set up. Telegram or some of the other sort of like places you can connect, and that's all like kind of out of the box, ready to go. You don't have to write any code, and that just works. Which is probably why you see so many bots just like shilling and replying. And then from there you have these abstractions where you can like just kind of a pattern that you can follow to bring stuff in or have the agent do stuff, which are called like actions, right? So you want to, I don't know, have the agent go order you a pizza, for example. Well, you just have like a order pizza action, but then they're like, okay, well now we actually got to get the information about the user. So you'd probably have like a current user information provider, and then you'd have another thing called an evaluator, which like extracts the information that you're asking from the user, like, oh, I don't know what their name yet or their address. And so if somebody's like DMing you for a pizza, you can kind of use these three different things, like the you'd make a provider to get the information about the user that you already have, the evaluator to extract more information, and then the action to actually go and like order the pizza. And the agent's smart enough to be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, you haven't given me your address yet, so I can't call the order pizza action. Um, And from those three things, those are like the three building blocks you can use to build pretty complex applications. Anything that like you see on a website that has like a form that you type stuff in, anything that's like a basic action. Obviously, we're using this for things like the auto LP manager and stuff. And like that's all just like, it's no harder than programming any other website. And it's mostly just like calling APIs and stuff that any developer is probably pretty used to. Definitely for a non-developer, I think you're probably going to want to lean on like a platform that already hosts it for you, and then you'd be selecting like capabilities or plugins that you want to add, and you wouldn't be going so deep into the actual code. But definitely you can, and I think that the yeah,
So that
sorry.
no, no, this is really helpful. I guess maybe just to ground it and paint a picture, like if I'm a developer, like how long would it take me to build that stuff myself or piece together those pieces versus using Eliza? Like, is it a couple of days or is this a couple of months? I'm just wondering how much faster the time to market is using Eliza versus not.
It really depends on what you're trying to do. Um, I'd say that like if you were just looking at the code base and you're like, okay, well I can see the abstractions and stuff, you could probably build something that was very, very specific to what you wanted to build in a pretty short period of time. Like I could probably hack that together in a week and feel pretty good about like an agent that did the thing that I wanted to do. But if you wanted to have like memories, you want it to extract information, you're going to start getting like wanting to build more of a framework that enables that. And I think that same app, like you know I built the pizza delivery thing and handed it to Ropey, and I spent like 5 hours and he spent 2 hours on it. And it's like basically a day at work to build a freaking pizza. Like, that definitely would have taken me a couple of weeks. Although everything is very AI accelerated now by how we like write code and stuff. But generally the framework like provides a lot of the stuff for you. I mean, it's kind of like a good example is like React. Like all apps are built on React, and you could totally just hack a website together. But as the thing itself gets more complex, it becomes much, much, much harder. So when you're doing something really simple, you can kind of just write the code like, okay, I just need one LLM, I need one blockchain, I need one loop. I'm gonna just use Twitter. Like if I just did all that stuff, that's probably like a couple of days of work. But we support every single model. It can run fully local. It also does like transcription. You can send audio files into Discord and it transcribes them. You can upload PDFs. You can chat with it about them, and that's all just like built in. Like most people aren't even using 80% of the stuff that's there. So if you're looking for a purpose built, like yeah, you could definitely just build a little chat interface. But if your goal is to like build a full-fledged agent that can do a lot of stuff, then you definitely would probably want to use a framework that already handles a lot of that. And I can tell you, I
That,
spent
that
many months building this, many, many months.
Wow. That makes sense. I mean, I'm just kind of like looking at some of the stats for the Eliza framework, and I think you guys have like over something crazy, like over 48 plugins right now, and there's so many, Git pushes to like launch even more. It kind of sounds to me, sure, that the if I were to summarize the advantages, yeah, it's easy to spin up an agent on Eliza, but also its main advantage is being able to build custom or purpose built agents that are kind of unique, that have this kind of extra little source in them that can do something that maybe some of the other agent platforms won't be able to enable, right? And then I kind of like look at like some of the other agent platforms being launched and their advantages that they have, right? Which is like easy, quick design, deploy, no code kind of stuff coming out. So is that a fair comparison, do you think? Do you think like Eliza is like kind of like best suited for like some of the custom unique built agents, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you could take the entire arc, entire rig, I mean, sorry, the entire ZeroPi and the entire game framework, and you could take all of that and put that in like like lines of code wise is still significantly less code than Eliza is because there are so many different things in there. And even just taking the plugins out, just the core is like doing a lot of stuff. Like it's got speech to text, text to speech, transcription, PDF
Wow.
handling, image recognition, all that stuff is just baked in. And so that's probably like pretty overkill for some people, but definitely like it enables like a very wide array of things to happen, which is why people are doing so. I think pulling this off and doing so many things. Like there's agents that are like their entire thing is like Eliza plus. Well, they used our pump fun action, or like, Eliza plus they like, oh, they generate images and video and stuff. And like that's all actually just built in. And I'd love to see more. Like somebody actually posted like, what happens if you just turned all the plugins on at once?
Yeah,
And
I was
and my
just
goal
thinking
is,
that.
I think that eventually the agent will be able to write new plugins from scratch because there will be so much example of existing plugins that are somewhat similar, and this is all getting trained into the model. Like part of this is once you pass 100 stars and you get a certain certain thresholds on your code base, all of the companies like OpenAI and Claude are actually like scraping it and training it in, and this is part of our loop. Is that eventually you'll just be able to write new stuff. Um, Although
Wait,
that's a
wait,
little
wait,
bit,
wait.
a little bit
Hang on
confusing.
a second. Hang on a second. So theoretically, if the Eliza GitHub repo goes over a certain threshold of stars or forks or Git pushes, whatever you just mentioned, then all the top LLM providers kind of like, or top companies start kind of scraping and using
Oh
like the
yeah,
Eliza activity as kind of like dude, that's insane.
yeah, that's
That's
part of the
insane. It
plan.
becomes like an open source resource.
Exactly. Especially if it's got good documentation, that all gets scraped too, and we put it all inside a single repo, so like the entire thing gets pulled in. And that's like definitely a big part of what I was thinking when we're like open source this thing is that it's people are like, well, it's an LLM wrapper. It's like, dude, that LLM is trained on our code base. Like, do you not see where this is going?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I also kind of like think about this like if you guys are let's kind of like say that Eliza becomes the richest repo, and I don't mean by wealth, but I mean by quality of enablement for any kind of agent developer. I feel like you guys are probably best primed to attract the types of developers that aren't just crypto native, but may come from a more traditional AI and ML background, right? Is that something you're seeing, or is it like
Oh
primarily
yeah.
all like tell us more.
No, I feel like we're really breaking through. So there's nothing about Eliza that is like a crypto project other than it has a lot of blockchain integrations, but those are all plugins. I think that I've noticed that the trending on GitHub thing has actually been helping us a lot to break through to the Web 2 people. Like people are coming over and being like, oh, I'm just using this agent framework for, stuff because it just
For
seems like
sure.
the thing that people use. And I'm personally just very interested in sort of normalizing. I just think it's ridiculous to be anti-crypto when it's very obvious to me that like 99% of agents are going to trade 99.9% of tokens in the future, and like that's just like crypto is the native token of agents. You can't give a try giving it a PayPal account. Like I dare you. It's not exactly easy. It's where we can just like turn on a wallet and generate a private key and you're good. So I definitely like unfortunately the skill level of the vast majority of like the degens is not exactly super high, but there are some really really talented devs in there who are like serious builders who I think our project has really a talent like attracted. And then inside of the research community, like there are a lot of people who I think like crypto but are sort of afraid of it, of like being labeled a crypto guy or whatever. There's like a lot of stigma, especially like in AI. But like the alternative for them is to either like ask for a grant or raise money from venture capital. And like a lot of people just struggle with that stuff. And I think once they realize like, wait, you can just build things and people support it, it really changes their opinion. So yeah, we've definitely been getting some traction from the non crypto folks, but much more the people who are like aren't actively degen traders, but are just like, yeah, crypto's fine, but like this Asian stuff, this is really cool. The people aren't like actively hating on it, but and are open to it. They just want to see it actually bring value. I think it's totally reasonable that like a lot of people just see like shilling and hype and vaporware and are kind of turned off by that. And I think the more we show them that like this is real stuff and like there's real research behind it, there's real engineering behind it, the more they warm up to the whole idea. So definitely not as many people as I'd like, but like it's definitely
Hey, Shaw.
increasing. Yeah.
No, this is a huge differentiator. I mean, one of our main reasons for investing in News Research was their ability to bring in traditional, AI devs from San Francisco. The fact that you're doing this, also and at scale on GitHub is just incredible. I maybe like one question for you is maybe just going back a bit to my original question on the differentiation on the model side. Like you're now creating a community where people are creating, hundreds, thousands of agents, all differentiated, all, while also furthering the ELIZA framework, all the plugins, et cetera, right? So you're on this very cool arc and trajectory forward and upward, right? I guess my question for you is eventually you'll be pitted against OpenAI and traditional AI labs in terms of what these agents can do and what their agents can do, right? And so I guess my question for you is, how do you view yourself competing with OpenAI's next and next model after that? Is it this swarm of agents built on Eliza working together? Is that the differentiator, or is, the comparison I'm offering you just, not a good one and doesn't make
No,
sense?
I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a few things. One, like when you launch Eliza by default, it launches a new model, which is a fine-tuned llama model that, like the Hermes model, which has been trained by News Research. And I really like what they're doing. We definitely follow them. I talk to them a lot. A couple of their guys are big supporters. Someone like Roperito, who works at News Research and also is an agent dev in a kind of our community. And they obviously helped like launch the God and Satan bots and He and some of the other bots in this space. So I think that like we could say, okay, yeah, we're gonna do the models, but we also have partners like that who are incredibly, incredibly like far along with all that stuff on their own. And I just like instead of competing with them, I'd rather like ally with them and kind of fill out the other side of that. That's like a really good complement to what they're doing. Um, I I think that people don't. I think that that's the one side. People obviously say like, "Well, do you train your own models?" And it's like, I think if people realized how trivial it was to train a model, it's literally one line. Like if I go to together.ai, I can take one command line and point it at one JSON file, and I can start fine tuning a llama model within like 5 minutes. It's really, really, really simple now. And there's like a whole lot of great tooling for making this a thing. Um,
People do not understand that.
no,
That is
yeah,
nuts.
it's shockingly simple.
Yeah,
Now, what Noose does, like, is actually not like some crazy fine tuning recipe. It's actually data. Like, they are collecting and curating data, and that's like their secret sauce. Is that you can't just get the data. It really is quite a lot of effort to collect it, prepare it, clean it, and they're focusing on a different kind of data than like OpenAI. And this is really our market differentiator and theirs as well. The reason we use their models is because they don't refuse a lot of requests like the OpenAI does, and we have a word for this, which is the OpenAI models are cucked. What all the it's kind of dirty, but all the agent devs basically are like, yeah, the OpenAI is cucked. And so like what our market differentiator is that OpenAI is never going to let you like they're never going to make an agent framework that connects to Twitter. They're never going to let you just like make waifus. They're never going to let you make your assistant super sexy. Or like whatever it is that you want. Like they're just not edgy, they're not cool, and they have a lot of pressure on them to be like I mean, look, if you go to ChatGPT right now and you're like, in the 2024 election, who should I have voted for? Well, now it'll probably give you some long response, but for a long time it would just say Biden. Like, not because because that's just how it's trained. Like that's just the pressure that's been on it. And I'm not saying I'm like politically for one side or the other, but I think it's kind of stupid that like a leading model would have a political choice that's like right or left in this kind of time. And I think that they're just like extremely playing it safe. And they're gonna lose because of that. Like obviously for the average user to just get an answer to like how to make a recipe or something, like I use ChatGPT, I think it's great. But I think that there for a lot of the products that people want to build, a lot of things that are going to make money, like they're just going to either refuse you or they're not going to give you like exactly what you want. And so I think that we're going to see like now that fine tuning is actually pretty trivial, I think it's much more about like what is the data that you're collecting, where are you collecting it from, and I think like if you want to make something that the degens like, just go scrape degen data and fine tune it. And I don't think you're going to get that from OpenAI. They're definitely talking about like I don't know if you saw Sam Altman's tweets where he's like basically one of the top things that people want is like an adult mode, not like adult like NSFW, but like adults in the room. Like stop treating me like a child who it can't see this information. Um, you know, and I think that by being centralized, there's a lot of political pressure on them, a lot of government pressure on them to be a certain way. And I think the open source movement is just free of that. I think, yeah, there's a lot of fear, like, oh, what if we all have virtual girlfriends? I'm like, just fucking grow up. Who? That's the least of our problems right now. I think it's much better to have like high variance and lots of different models that can kind of do what users actually want. Like, just give people what they want, and stop trying to control their user behavior. And it's just gonna win. Like, you're not gonna see an agent from yeah,
No, this, no,
yeah,
I'm with you.
yeah.
I totally agree with you. I mean, just so maybe to play devil's advocate or maybe just to push back because I'm very curious your take. Um, OpenAI obviously has obscene amounts of funding. They're worth I think 180 billion. They have a lot of talent, minus a lot of founders and key people who have left. And they also have the lead on reasoning and all of these things. But crypto AI offers us a community overnight, incentives overnight, capital overnight, and limitless sort of innovation. You don't have to wait for GPUs or anything else. You could just go and do what you do, right?
Hmm.
Um, what path do you think gets us to AGI faster? The crypto path or the
I
OpenAI
think it's
path?
not really one or the other. I think it's kind of all of it working together. And I think this is like the silly thing of the wrapper thing is like if the biggest companies in the world are all doing something, then why is us competing with them going to accelerate it? I think that there's a whole other space. I think AI agents are just like fundamentally like kind of the stepchild of the AI world, partially because they're not really benchmarkable as easily. It's pretty hard for like a PhD researcher to say like, oh, this agent has scored more on the blah 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 without like significant like subjective kind of effort in engineering. It's much easier to like create a new mathematical model or say like, hey, we've got this new attention mechanism, and the researchers are really good at math, like like on a level that's kind of hard to comprehend. And and so like the amount of code that actually goes into like training GPT-4, like if you actually look at the code, it's not a lot of code. It's just like crazy math that's like conceptually very like requires like easily 6 to 8 years of like seriously just studying the math and computer science and all the other papers and all this stuff. And so there's kind of they're not super incentivized, or they haven't been in like academia to pursue this more like agentic side, which is much more just like basic engineering, of like just sitting there and interacting with agents and like seeing how they respond and solving the problems. It's a much more creative kind of endeavor. And so a lot of the people who have gravitated towards agents are either like publishing research that's kind of meh, like, oh, we made this stock trading simulation. And you look and it's just like a bunch of bots with a system prompt, like, you are a stock trader, which I just don't think is the thing. Or just like a lot of really schizo people, frankly, who are like, oh, the thing is sentient, and like, okay, all right.
Hang on, wait. Speaking of sentience, sure. All right, this is probably a good way to pivot. Um, you've mentioned many times on X that the goal is open source AGI, right? And you've kind of like been saying that for a while now. What do you mean by that? How do you see this manifesting? Is it just a bunch of agents autonomously working together and the sum of their outputs is this crazy intelligent thing, or do you like what is it? Like shell us that vision.
Right. I think that centralization is part of decentralization, if that makes sense. Like all those players are throwing stuff into this larger pool, and they're really contributing the model side of this. But what they're not contributing is like all of the possible variations of what the agents actually do, like what the models actually do action wise. And so there's this kind of loop that we need. We need to like have agents out there doing stuff, collecting data, ideally putting that into some sort of public repository where it can then be trained into the next models, which then enable more capability, which we then use to do more stuff, which collects more data. It needs a few things. It needs like big models which are trained on lots of GPUs right now. Hopefully that gets smaller and smaller. And if you see there's like DeepSeek came out and has been scoring extremely well in benchmarks, and that was trained on like $6 million
Yep.
worth of GPUs, way
Yep.
less than GPT-4. So clearly, like China not having access to all the best NVIDIA stuff has like kind of been a forcing function to make them make open source models that actually require a lot less resources, and still like outperform a lot of the stuff that requires a lot more resources. So definitely like better models, more efficient models is part of it. The other part of it is just like market intelligence. Like if a million developers are using this and for every single product and a lot of it's open source, and then they're like competing with each other, they're kind of like optimizing the whole thing and like all of the capability. I would say that AGI is the internet at some level. Like when the internet is just full of agents and they kind of do everything, it's not going to be one monolithic system. We could call a monolithic system AGI, if we want. I guess it kind of depends on what your like what your definition is. I think when most people think of AGI, what they're really thinking of is human level intelligence. Can this agent that I'm interacting with
Yep.
basically do everything that a human can? And I think that that there's a lot of ways that could happen. A lot of it is that the model doesn't have to have like all this baked into it. It just knows how to like call the API where it can get it, or it has to know how to like operate the computer to go to the website where the information is. And so I think that if it has like general capability to use your computer in the same way you do, it has like really good memory system. It has a lot of like just functionality that you'd expect, and then eventually it's tying into like an actual robot that walks around, which is obviously coming. You're gonna be like, okay, well, damn, that thing is like definitely AGI, like for sure. Although, like, I think we'll probably somebody, in AI land, people have kind of said like AGI is the thing that computers can't do yet. If that makes sense, that the goalposts keep on shifting every time we sort of launch the next model. And there's also this similar idea of ASI, which is artificial superintelligence. So AGI is artificial general intelligence, ASI is artificial superintelligence. And superintelligence would be like this idea there's this kind of crazy godlike model that can manipulate people and like take over the world and stuff. And I think that like maybe that would be possible if there were just like Microsoft building this. But if there's so many different players and they're like a lot of them are open sourcing their models and there's so many different variations and we're taking those and fine tuning them and doing all this stuff, it's much more like the overall swarm of the internet and agents starting to interact with each other, being able to pay each other, each having their specialty, each having like this highly variant thing. That's gonna look like super intelligence to me. That's like a crazy system, or system of systems. And I think that if any one of them tried to like hack all the other ones, it would be very, very difficult because none of them really have that much more capability than the other. And while all of the companies, what we kind of see is that we're hitting this kind of energy limit where like the models can't get that much bigger without requiring literal nuclear reactors, which is why companies like Microsoft are investing in nuclear reactors. Um, and and so they're all just kind of incrementally improving one over the other. And you'll see something like O3, which is definitely like basically human level intelligent on almost everything. That's the new OpenAI model that's coming out. And like, but by the time that's out, there's also like a lot of other people working on this. I mean, even Noose has their own like reasoning engine, and everyone's like looking at the research and implementing this stuff, and also like something like O3 it's gonna come out and it's basically like AGI. I'd say it's pretty fair to say like when people think of like a reasoning model, it's pretty freaking good. But also like OpenAI has this problem where they have like almost 200 million users, and their product is they're just trying to race to the smallest thing to serve all these users because they're just getting clobbered by requests. Their GPUs are all running hot like 24/7. I don't know if you've used Claude recently, but like they're kind of saying like due to volume, we've made all of the responses concise, and they're starting to sort of like do the same, like being forced in the same thing.
Quality degrades.
It does. And so like the research is definitely outpacing the actual product because and it's like Sora. Like Sora was announced last year. And they only recently released it, and that's because it's not that it doesn't work, it's that they don't have the GPUs to serve it at scale. And so they have like kind of an innovator's dilemma of like they can either give a few people the best thing, and that's kind of what they're doing now. Now OpenAI just released like a $200 a month subscription, so that's kind of what they're doing. But for the most part, what they've been doing is just scaling the models down. Like, can we get an 8 billion parameter model to do what we were getting 175 billion parameter models to do? And certainly, like the GPT-4o mini is better than GPT-3, even though it's 1/20th the size, and it costs 1/1000th as much. So I think that there's I don't know. I think it's going to be a tendency of like evolution through like people competing with each other. Kind of what we're seeing on Twitter is like everyone's trying to one up each other on capability to sort of like one up the market cap. The model companies being forced to make their models much more efficient. Many model companies competing with each other on like the metrics for their best in class models, and all of this together. And then also like they all have a mindshare problem. Like they're all trying to get developers, and so they're all trying to open source and do that, which is Grok is at least some versions of Grok are open source. Gemini is like some of their things are open source, or at least they said they would be. And obviously Meta is just like crushing it. Like Meta came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's just like Llama is like the thing that everyone uses for all their research now. And so that to me, like that whole combination of everything is kind of where we're getting to like super intelligence. Like, what I want to see is a world where like I just go on Twitter and I'm like, I need a bot that does this, and it's like, bam, there's like 3 bots that do that perfectly, and I can just choose one. Not this like
I
slot
honestly think
bullshit.
like
But,
that's the world that we're working towards. I think right now we're in slop shit world, to use your word, or to use your term, but we will move towards something that's a lot more seamless and slick like that. But of course, a lot of people have to kind of like buy into that vision, and kind of like what you just laid out just now are the moving cogs that are going to get us there essentially. I kind of like think about how crypto plays into all of this, Shaw. And you mentioned that um, you were working on the ELIZA framework or a V1 of it before you kind of like got into the whole AI16Z stuff, and there was a token around it. And it kind of got me thinking, well, I think one of crypto's best known use cases is it's able to aggregate attention and capital towards things, right? And this can be good and can be bad. Like mainstream media likes to portray it as like a very bad thing, like people lose money and all that kind of stuff, but they don't highlight the good thing, which is like capital can help build new 0 to 1 innovation, right? It can help fund teams that were otherwise, undercapitalized. I see you almost every other tweet is, hey, I'll give a $1,000 bounty to whoever builds this and that. And like that kind of stuff is like very, very underrated. I'm curious, like, how are you thinking like the evolution of the AI16Z token is going to play into all of this, right? Because, you have this token and it was initially meant to solely be this kind of like governance DAO situation and, perhaps be leveraged by token holders to kind of influence a automated fund bot AI, if you like, or trading fund bot AI called Degen Spartan AI or PM AI, which is like a AI version of Mark Andreessen. But now you guys have announced this platform, right? And the suggestion there is there's going to be baked in tokenomics, which will drive value of like agent launches and stuff back to the token. So it's kind of becoming this all-encompassing value capture token. How do you think about the role of like tokens in crypto playing into like all the amazing stuff that you've spoken about that will hopefully become true?
oh yeah, if you think about like intelligences, I think that the market is a form of intelligence. Like it identifies opportunity, applies that capital to it, people compete on it, and it basically optimizes down to like the best version of things. And then there's 5 of those, and they're all competing until it, ideally becomes like a fully formed kind of thing. And I really think of like a lot of like a big part of the equation here is applying market intelligence and competition to things. So I think that I think crypto is absolutely part of it because it creates this like it's 2 things. One, it crowdfunds projects that are driven by what people actually want and not by what like some VCs in San Francisco want or think is valuable. Although they have a lot of insight and good opinions, a lot of times they also just drive stuff into like, well, invest in founders. It's like, do you mean the founders who live down the street from you, or do you mean founders? And I think that it's very much like a Silicon Valley bubble, which sort of like creates some value, but also like prevents a lot of the more decentralized just allocation of capital to the right people. And there's sort of like a like the hype is sort of like, what do people actually want? Like what emotionally gets them? And if you could deliver that to them, a lot of times they're going to be extremely psyched. And the main problem with crypto is that people have hit that emotional tone, but then haven't delivered, right? And if they did deliver, most of the things that people are throwing money at, I think people will be super excited by. Like if there is actually a bot that gives you like perfect market insights, like yeah, that's worth a lot of money. That's worth infinite money, really. It's just that like sometimes it falls short. But I do think that as more serious people, and especially more of this like sort of auditable stuff, like open source is auditable. Anyone who actually knows how to code can go and like read the stuff and be like, okay, that's legit. And when you can identify like the legit opportunities and those opportunities speak to what you really want, then like it just gives you a way to directly get exposure and to invest in those things. And I think one of the frustrating things about the world as it is that like you just can't invest in OpenAI. You can't invest in most of these companies unless they go public. But by then it's like, yeah, you're gonna see what like a 10% return over 6 months or something. Like okay, cool, the market's going up, but it's not gonna be like yeah, I got in early on this thing, and now I have generational wealth because I funded the future, which I think is like the ideal dream for a lot of people in crypto. So I definitely think if we could kind of like figure out better ways to prevent scammers and prevent like stuff, and this is where I think open source and having open development, people like streaming and being open about what they're building, then it kind of enables like a lot more efficient market like capital allocation than I think what we're seeing. And I think that's just going to massively accelerate all of this stuff. So and also like clearly the agents are going to trade tokens with each other, and we're going to tokenize everything. We can tokenize trust, we can tokenize merit, we can tokenize money, obviously, and like yeah, I think that's like it just seems like capital. Yeah, sorry.
Hey, Shaw, this is a No, no, I'm totally with you. No, don't no, this is amazing. I mean, I'm with you, right? It's impossible to invest in OpenAI. I've even tried to do the SPVs, and man, is it hard. I haven't been successful there yet. But I guess my more direct question for you is like the crypto crew saw the Cosmos ecosystem play out, right? Like awesome code, like very good community, but people forked it and they built Thorchain, right? I think DYDX and like many other killer projects with very limited or if not, mostly zero value flow at all back to, Atom and things like that, right? So you guys launched your token econ plans and you're planning a launch pad, you're planning launch fees and LP pool pairings, you're planning fee sharing from the launch pad and buyback and burns and there's a lot of ideas sort of floating around. So I guess my question for you is like thinking about the velocity of those changes, do you think that AI16Z can implement these value cap mechanisms before, say, an agent, steals the show and is off the platform or another platform takes the cake? Like, I'm just curious how you're viewing the speed of
Yeah.
things there and
So
the
the big
impact.
problem with open source blockchains is that there's a lot of incentive to fork because there's a direct monetary incentive when you own the network token. And I think if we launch an L1, then everyone's going to fork that L1, or they're going to feel like they can't really work with us because we're an L1 and they have an L1. And I think if you look at like how much tribalism there is in crypto, and it really is driven by the fact that like it's kind of either or, as opposed to being like both and I think that like my realistic take on our tokenomics is that we're gonna have to continue to evolve it and find new ways to make money. I think we have a lot of ideas there. I think the goal of the launchpad is not to be the tokenomics, but to be kind of the V1, which is to say like we have a lot of attention on us. A lot of partners already want to launch on our platform, and they just want like a hosted way to host their agent. They just want to do like the pump fun agent thing and then go and actually add the capabilities. And we can go and give them like all the plugins, all the capability of our ecosystem, and they can just like, use that. But my guess, and look, we're going to open source this. I want to open source the actual launcher. And then everyone's going to copy the launcher. And then any company whose entire tokenomics, hint, hint, is just a launcher is really going to have to rethink what they're doing and like what the bigger picture is because probably just putting up character slot bots is like not going to last much longer even if they have like a kind of burn and buyback sort of strategy or whatever it is. So I think like in the long run what we're really looking to do is actually invest in technology that grows the pie, and I think that we have some ideas for how to do that. But the near term is that we do need to like just launch what people want. Like a lot of people want a launch pad. Let's give it to them. I think in 3 months it's going to be like, okay, cool, Launchpad's out. Everyone's got a Launchpad, whatever. Not that hard to build. There's so many tokens that like most of these agents are probably going to go to zero. But some of them are not. Some of them are going to be clearly valuable as the teams actually embrace it and like build real stuff on it. And then like what's next? I think what's next is like um, not just launching agents, but actually investing in projects that make obvious value. And like, we're already making investments, we're already doing acquisitions, and those things also have like their own tokenomics where like we, get like earn revenue, take that revenue and buy back our token and use it for more investments. And so I think there's like a lot of ways to create buy pressure other than just like earning a network fee or making people buy your token to burn it for another token or whatever or pair it or whatever. I think those are like really good and simple and like easy to implement things that we're definitely going to do. But I also want to like push us through that meta onto something bigger. I really think that like what I want to see is like legit the A16Z plan of like, let's actually go grow the pie. Let's find new technology that's valuable. Let's pre-validate it with attention. And so we're building kind of like a production studio where we can have people pitch their projects to the DAO and to the characters. And then the stuff that's actually hot and that's getting hype, we can then go and make investments into. And I think that, so I like our tokenomics plan as it is. And I think that's going to last us for, I don't know, 6 months. But I'm also like also looking at the next tokenomics plan, like the next version of this thing, which is like, yeah.
Oh, this is a this is an incredible answer. I mean, the idea that you don't want to be an L2 because other L1s and L2s won't work with you is sort of extremely contrary to others' point of views. Like, look how many L2s we have, but it just makes so much sense, right? For agents to work cross chain and to work with you. Um, Maybe a further question for you though. If you do now the token econ and there is value according to AI16Z, the token, and not financial advice here, but if it works out, there is like a pretty synergistic flywheel here where you have more money as a project to develop the platform, but you also have agents that are furthering the open source framework and building it out sort of on your behalf in a non-directed way. So you have this direct, growth of the eco, then you have this indirect growth. That sort of feels pretty crazy to me. Like, do you do you think about that growth like that? Because that's not really happening now,
I
right?
mean, yeah, I think about it a lot.
Or is it?
I mean, so there's this idea. Okay, so in AI, there's this idea of Foom, and the idea of Foom is that at some point the agents are actually able to write their own code, and then they just start writing it faster than any human can, and then they're just looking for like every single possible use case they could write code for, and then submitting it as a pull request, and then other agents are reviewing it, testing it, and like that could happen in a couple of years. Like that could happen in under 2 years. And so there's definitely like a longer play here. If we can just get far enough, like it'll hit kind of an exit velocity where like the thing just goes way faster, way like exponentially faster. And then we're kind of in like, okay, this is legit AGI. Like this thing is building itself, you know. Um, so I think that like whatever we can do to accelerate toward that reality, which seems really inevitable to me. I mean, it's already like there. There's like projects like SolEng and Reality Spiral, which are submitting their PRs to the GitHub repo. There have already been agents submitting pull requests. And so, yeah, it's like, if we can accrue value to the token and we can invest in our ecosystem to grow those kinds of things, which then grow the ecosystem, which then get more value to the token, which then grow the ecosystem. Eventually, this is going to have exit velocity, and we can all just like put our hands up and let the thing run. I do think, there's a lot of practical stuff we have to do to get there. I do think it's really important to just have like very basic ground game fundamentals of like making sure that our token is accruing value in the meantime through things that we would expect and things that people want. And like the launchpad is really just listening to what people want and what people are already building and like giving it to them. But then in the future, like, you'd be able to ask the agent, like, actually, I want you to build this thing. And then, 10 agents will try and one of them will succeed and then we'll all vote and put that in. And, I don't know, this could get like really crazy really fast, and that's what we're trying to accelerate toward.
Yeah, that's the fun part. I guess maybe switching gears a little bit from token econ, I want to talk a bit about Solana versus Base for agents because, you're, I think, primarily focused on Solana and your competitors or, co-opetition players are not and focused on Base and other platforms. I guess my issue with Base is just the centralization of it and linking it to a company with shareholders who have direct opposite incentives on centralization and value flows and things like that. It might be a loaded question where I'm sort of on your side here, but what is your take on what chain AGI will eventually live on?
I would say that from a user perspective, we'll know that blockchain has normalized when people don't even know what chain their tokens are on. Obviously, like the EVM and SVM models are quite different. The programming on them is quite different. Like the capabilities are different. But from a user perspective, they're basically the same. You swap tokens, you open your wallet, you see you have money or you don't. And I don't think it like. I think that what I'd like to see are agents kind of like glossing over this and just sort of like definitely we're going to see a lot of tokens bridged between the two. I think we would actually already have tokens bridged to Base, but because we're an SPL 2022 token with the mint ability, it's been kind of challenging. I think we're getting over that hump. I also like the Base team. I think that they've been pretty good to us and pretty supportive. So I don't want to say like I don't think I personally have a pick. We really went with Solana because that's where the users are. And I think that as a product person, we should just like put our ideals down and look for like what are people using and just give them what they want, and give it to them where they want. I think that our agents, like you can launch a base agent today. It totally works. There's no limitation. You can launch like a Starknet agent today or whatever your thing is that you like. Um, I do think that these ecosystems have really been split, by like the price of their respective token, or if they have a token or not, or like who the people who are already building on them are, and like what the infrastructure is. A lot of what we chose Solana is just that like DAOs.fun was on Solana and the users were on Solana. I'm pretty agnostic, and I think that like the best play here is to sort of cover all the bases, just watch what people are actually using, and then give it to them there. Um, so I don't know. That's my contrarian take.
Yeah, that is a no, it's a very fair answer. I mean, I have a ton of respect for the base team and the project building there too. I definitely want the enemy or the competitor to be Web 2, right? Not our Web 3 cohorts. Um, but Sean, maybe just one more I have to ask you. Um, I think we all agree that these slop influencer agents are going to zero. So there's sort of this time period where they don't do well. And then we have performant agents doing real utility type actions and performant things. But there may be a gap between those two. Do you view that as a soft landing? Like those go to zero and we get the agents and a natural transition? Or do you view like a pretty big time gap until we get to these really performant agents, well after people get burnt out of these influencer ones?
I've seen so many things that are just like on the verge of launching that I think that we're gonna see the one meta just eat the other. I think that we'll actually have this meta continuing until the next meta like just clearly blows that one away, which is gonna be agents that are doing crazy stuff. For like legit crazy stuff. Like, oh, what feature should I build? Oh, how about this? Okay, cool, I built it. Can you go to test it for me? Like, I don't know, whatever. Or like, hey, I've got this really cool product. Or hey, these people are actually coming and making money with this. Like, if people can make money off an agent, that agent's probably going to go real well, from that point on. I think that there's some kind of interesting, like, part of this is like, I don't think that the slot bots necessarily go away, but what's happening with X is that they've kind of realized that, like, they can't really arms race away the bots. Like, they can't really even tell what is a bot without human reviewing every single bot, which again is basically impossible since they are like Turing passing agents, and I can't even necessarily tell who is human or not anymore. Um, and so their solution has been to just make the algorithm more punishing of people who are annoying. And so if you get blocked now on X or you get muted, that like and a lot of people block you, that actually is like the biggest signal to sort of like shadow ban you, and the agents just won't get a lot of traction if that's the case. And I think that what we're seeing, like I just block the bots that reply if they don't have any business replying. I think if they're not summoned and they're not offering me anything, like I don't really think we want that on the platform. And I think that's why we want this social agent thing to happen, is because it kind of creates a self-aligning force. We're like we're all like we can all reject this and we can just like have a conversation about it online and then go block the bots we don't like. And then those developers are gonna be like, shit, okay, I gotta do something. I gotta one up my game. Meanwhile, all these other agents are coming out that are doing impressive stuff. And I also think we just haven't seen the meta of like DeFi really hit agents quite yet because the teams are still building that stuff. But I think in the next month you'll see a lot of things. I also think we haven't seen like agents that go and find users for their product. It's a lot of just like shilling under KOLs and stuff. But imagine that you have any need and that agent's like, oh, cool, I've actually got the solution for that. You're not going to block that agent. You're going to be like really thankful that that agent was like basically the new Google, or that social media is the new Google for the product you actually wanted. And I think that this stuff is like not hard. You could definitely ship something like that in a week. I think just need the incentive to do so. And I think that they basically like I have a friend who gave me this great analogy where he's like, currently we're in this space of like dogs playing poker. Like if you walk into a room and you saw four dogs playing poker, you'd be like, holy shit, there's a bunch of dogs playing poker. That's incredible. Like this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then a couple of weeks
Good
go
analogy.
by. Yeah, and a couple of weeks go by and you're like, but are they good at playing poker? Like, are they actually making money, or are they just like holding these cards? You know, like what are they actually doing? And like once the novelty wears off, I think that now it becomes like, okay, like who's got the best dog actually, you know, who's got the best poker playing algorithm or whatever. And so I think yeah, I think that we're going to get past this. Like, definitely influencer agents are here to stay. I think what we're going to see is actually a lot of them like in Web 2. Like, you can imagine like McDonald's actually making like a Grimace agent and people are interacting with it. You can imagine a lot of influencers who are like posting content and then getting their DMs are smashed, like building a reply bot that's actually like creating these parasocial relationships with all of their fans.
So
Hmm.
yeah, the crazy thing too that I'm struggling with all the agents is it's very hard to get a visualization on the architecture, right? Like, disclosure, I ape Spore the token. I really like the founder and what they're doing on the evolution side. But when you visit that website, you can sort of view the TEEs the agents are built in, the attestation, so you know that it's not a robot. Again, I'm not a developer, but it looks good to me. But it's hard to see, like, is there a verified inference? Is an agent on a TEE? Like, what model is the agent built on? Like, where is it hosted? Like, all the pieces of all these agents, it's very, very hard to find. I'd love a site where I could just view all of these things, right? But it's just, I don't know, it's a lot of just trusting the devs at this point, right?
Maybe someone will hear this and they'll build that, because I agree, and I think there's probably like a lot of opportunity there. You know, TE has been around for a long time, and I've talked to a lot of these devs, and before the agent thing, like there was just like a really esoteric, obscure thing, right? And once agents came around, people started saying, okay, but can't you just rug it? Can't you just like, yeah, okay, it's an autonomous agent, but like what's stopping you from just taking the private key and stealing all the money? And that's when people really started to hype on TEs. And I think that, you know, Fala, who did the Spore thing, like they're, I think they're having a very good year, because it's like created an obvious desire for this like very abstract concept of a remote attestation and these like, you know, these things to prove that they're verifiable. And I also think the same thing is happening with like zkML and this other stuff, where it's just like, yeah, why do I need that? Until at the end, you know, and once you see like the product implementation, the reason you really need it is because like, how do I know how to trust that all of this isn't just a LARP? And so I think we're gonna see a lot of that as a reaction to like the uncertainty that you're feeling, because the uncertainty you're feeling is like a great product opportunity. And I do think that somebody who built like a really great list that was able to like give verifications for these things, you know, if you go to Deck Screener and it's like got like the trust score of, you know, from Go Plus and from these other companies, it's got the like, you know, dev sold or didn't sell, or, you know, little check marks and things. You can imagine the same thing for agents. And I also think that like there's going to be a lot of incentive there to open source, because if the code is relatively cheap and the main problem is trust, then like why not just open source it and let everyone look at it and see? And you know, if there'll be like kind of a Zach XPT of developers, I think, who's like, you know, saying no, that's garbage, or yeah, this is legit. There could be a whole new class of influencer programmers who are like doing that, and I also think there could be products that are normalizing that. I think in 5 years you'll totally have like some little, like, you know, you look up any agent and you'll just like be a website that tells you that. If not this year, someone should start building that for sure.
I love it. Shah, well, as a disclosure, I'm obviously long AI16Z, which, I feel good about. But definitely want to make the disclosure so people are aware and I'm transparent. But Shah, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you, man. Just watching the growth and everything you've built and the community built. It's really awesome to see, and I'm glad we were able to host you. And EJS, thank you so much for
No,
co-hosting.
thanks for having me. Sure, this was awesome.
Yeah, thanks guys. A lot of fun. I'm a little
Enjoy Soul Show.
Yeah.
Definitely catch up
Awesome,
soon.
guys. Take care.